Okay.
I'd like to welcome all of you to the Kelley House Museum. My name is Jane Tillis, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Kelley House Museum. And I'd like to also welcome Jill Lemos and Stephen Jordan, because they're our speakers for today. Barbara Reed was supposed to come, but she couldn't make it because of the weather. But they'll take her place, I suppose. I'd also like to welcome Maynard Kaminsky, who's our videographer for the day. So if you're interested in leaving any memories of Angela Lansbury here, we highly recommend that you do. You write it on a piece of paper and stick it on the board right over there. And we'll collect all of them, and then we'll get back to you with what we're going to do with them. So today's presentation is on Murder, She Wrote, and Jill and Steve were both extras in the TV show, so I'd like to turn it over to them at this point.
Thanks, Jane. My mom, as you know or may not know, was the casting and local director of finding locations. She had a file of any people that wanted to be an extra, and she knew everybody in town, and she was able to get locations. And then when my dad retired, he helped with the locations, and they also helped find people accommodations, cars, all different types of things that they did. These are some of the scripts that were left with my mom, and I've given them to Kelley House. Here's a couple to put over there on the rack so that people can look at those. And I think Steve and I are going to read a scene later, so I'm going to keep this one right here. I mean, why not? We've got it.
We're captive.
And that too. It was really, really fun to work on not only Murder, She Wrote, but all the different movies and commercials that were made here. And my mom was very good at organizing and making everything run smoothly, making sure people were on time, making sure her people always knew when to be there and where to be there. But I will say this, I had a different last name, and so they didn't know that I was TJ's daughter. And we called her TJ instead of Mom, or especially on the set, because we didn't want to upset people and think, oh, 14 of TJ's relatives are working on it. But we did. We worked on a lot of things. And that was before I worked full-time for the post office. It was back in the 80s. That was before I had a real job. Anyway, a couple of the memories I like to share about Angela Lansbury. I have 3 children. My youngest daughter was very small. Tyler was very small when the movies were here. And she thought that Angela was one of Mom's sisters. My mom had a lot of sisters. We had a lot of aunts and uncles in our family, and a lot of them lived out of town. They lived somewhere else. Well, Angela periodically came to town. She came over to the house to have tea, and Mom worked with her, and until Tyler was about 10, she thought that was one of her aunts. She didn't know. Great aunt. So that's Tyler. She was too young to be in any of the scenes. My son, my middle child, my son Alex, was about 8 or 10 when he actually had a speaking role in one of the episodes. He was a Boy Scout that discovered a body and runs up to Miss Fletcher. Miss Fletcher, I found a body, or there's a dead body, something like that. Anyway, he has a line. He's 42 or 3 now, and he still gets a $10 residual every once in a while from episodes of that show. So that's always fun. Yeah, and Angela was absolutely wonderful to all the children. She was so sweet to all the kids on set. The kids on set have to have a guardian. They have to have a school teacher. My other sister Joan got to be the substitute teacher quite often too. Anyway.
Family member.
Well, you know, you have to be sure that someone's going to show up. You're going to do what Mom says. Anyway, there were a lot of people involved whenever there were any children in the scenes, and quite a few of Alex's friends, I think about half his soccer team, were the Boy Scouts in that episode, and he was very, very proud, and I have quite a few pictures of him as a little guy. He had kind of a long beetle haircut. He was pretty cute, standing next to his name, Alexander Fossey, on trailer door. So that's my story of Alex. But I think one of the best stories I have of Angela was with my oldest daughter, Marcelia, goes by Marcy. She was, I would say, 10 or 12. She and Scott Wells were cast as two children that are playing on the beach with their dog. So it was down on Big River Beach, just to the west of the bridge. And Lindy Peters, one of our local, well, he was our local mayor in Fort Bragg for a long time, but he's still on the city council. But Lindy Peters was the dead body. He had a wetsuit on, and then his clothing over the wetsuit, and he was stretched out in the river, to the body to be found. So the two little children, my daughter and Scott, they run up with the dog, and the dog throwing the ball for the dog. They're playing, and then they see the body in the water. And Marcy screams, and she was a little girl with a loud voice. It was probably F over double high C, the pitch. And they did one take, and the sound guy says, "We don't need to do it again. We got it." So they did the scene about 3 more times with the kids, discovering the body and Tupper running up and all of that. But they told her, just mime the scream. So she did. Yeah. So those are some of the times that Angela was just so wonderful with all the kids. She told them all they were doing a good job. She was just very, very friendly to them and allowed them to take pictures with her, no problem at all. She would pose for pictures, and she gave quite a few autographs. And one other final little memory I have of Mom being amused by Angela. As I said, they became good friends and exchanged Christmas cards for all the years until my mom passed. And Mom liked to wear her sculpted gold tea. It was just a kind of a fancy tea on a little gold necklace. And the first time Angela saw it, she said, "Oh, Toni, you're wearing half an ankh." And so my mom told that over and over and over again. It was just the tea part, Anyway, it was just so cute, and they had a very lovely relationship. As did Barbara, who couldn't be here today. Barbara was owner of Hill House at the time, and she spent a lot of time with not only Angela but all the stars that came up and performed in the different episodes. Barbara wanted me to be sure to tell you that the little chapbook that she did, the photos of Murder, She Wrote, is being remastered, and another one of my sisters, Jane this time, is doing more dialogue, because this is mainly photos that Barbara had taken herself or collected during those years, and they're redoing it. It's going to be available on Amazon probably in
We'll
May.
probably have it too.
And it'll be here, and the sales of this, even through Amazon, they're going to find a way to donate some of the proceeds back to Kelley House.
And we do sell this book. It's only $10.
And there's some great pictures in it. Anyway, so I'll let Steve have a turn. It's about time, huh, Steve?
Okay. Well, I'm going to pick up a little bit from where Jill left off. Jill and I have known each other since we were born. I grew up right down here on the corner. There's a long building there. That's a replica of the one that I grew up in. And it used to be the Old Town Theater. And the back part, or the main part of the theater, where they used to show the movies, was my playroom growing up. So I always had the imagination going. I loved theater, I loved film. We used to go to the movies every Sunday. I always loved film. And Jill and her brother Bill and her other sisters, June, Joan, and Jane, I'd always go over to their house after school and grammar school and stuff, and we would always play either lip syncing to a record or playing out in the playhouse and stuff. We were always together playing and having fun and doing stuff together. And her mother, Toni, knew me very, very well and knew of my interest in film. So every time there was a film coming to town, Toni would phone my mother and say, my mother's name is Jean, and she would say, Jean, they're going to be making a movie, so please let Steve know to be up here And wherever I was either working in San Francisco or Los Angeles or San Diego, and I had basically temp jobs, so I could get away at any time. So I would let the job go and come up and be an extra, or in fact my first extra was in summer of '42, again as a result of Toni. Toni is responsible for my entire film career. But I have to say, because of Toni, I have a SAG card, a Screen Actors Guild card. And
Me too.
yeah, oh, see, we're union members.
Yeah.
So it's because of Toni that I had all of these opportunities. I did a few extra work, outside of the area, but really all of my work in film has been here in Mendocino. It's provided me with that little touch of Hollywood. And let's see, what did I want to say about that? So anyway, so Toni would phone my mother and say, tell Steve to come up, and so I would come up and then I would audition, and this one time I got the part of a reporter in an episode of Murder, She Wrote. Any messages from me? Fowler, 231. Was my line. And I still rehearse it every day just in case they want to come back and reshoot the scene. I've got it down. But it was so thrilling. And then too, I had my own dressing room. Yes, I had my own dressing room. They put my name was on the door. I mean, they put masking tape and wrote it with felt pen, but it was my name on that door, and it just they made you feel so wonderful and so part of the whole production team, and it was a very, very exciting time. Do you want to take another shot yet? I'm trying to think of some more incidents that happened.
Get out your notes.
Okay, one of the things that, I have a background also in opera. I worked several years in professional opera, and so I like the production side of things. And so when they were filming here, I would be very attentive to what was going on. And one of the things I noticed is I was in 2 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. And one of them was called Obituary for a Dead Anchor. And the second one was called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall.
That was the 2-part one. Yeah.
That was the 2-parter, yeah. And so in these episodes, what I noticed was while they were rehearsing on set and going through some scenes and setting up the cameras and adjusting things, they have what's called a second team. Now the second team are substitutes for the main actors. And what they do, they go to all the basic markings of where they're supposed to move, and so they get everything right, and then they call the main performers out. Well, while the second team was going through their motions, I noticed the crew, everyone was having a fun time, a good time with everything. They were going like, and you thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to work like this all the time because it's so much fun, and And then they called out the main actors. And of course, Angela Lansbury was the main actor. And when she appeared on the set, all of a sudden you felt everyone kind of stiffen up a little bit and became extra attentive, extra professional, and that was her power on a set. Even though everything, it was relaxed, but it was relaxed with a little bit of reserve. It was very, very interesting just to see that little bit of change happen. But the other thing that I liked about Ms. Lansbury is the fact that she was always letter perfect with her lines. She never missed a line. And at one time when Gene Simmons was here as a guest star, every time they would film, it was like every other line that she had, she'd go, line, line, line.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was just how she was able to, I mean, she's an incredible actress and incredibly beautiful with a gorgeous voice, but she had difficulty with her lines, and then Angela Lansbury would come along behind her, be letter perfect. And never once did you see any glance askance or ridicule or anything coming from Angela Lansbury. She was always professional and gracious. Yeah.
I just concur. And the other thing, a couple of times, it would be somebody's birthday, and Angela would sing, and they would sing to the crew person or whatever, and everybody would sing happy birthday. And I don't know if many of you know that she was also a Broadway musical star, and she had a gorgeous voice, and she was proud to sing, and that was always really a treat to get to hear her sing, even if it was just happy birthday. I was reminded of one, I can't remember which episode the name was, but Brian Keith was in one, and we were down in front of Circa down on Main Street doing a scene down there, and it was the same kind of a thing. Angela's lines were always perfect, and the good old Brian Keith, he was such a tough old guy, and he kept blowing his lines, and he kept swearing. I was like, cut, going again, cut, going again. And he was swearing, and so finally, Angela just said, Brian, children. And so he stopped swearing. He still was messing up his lines, but he wasn't swearing. So that reminded me of that one. So a lot of things that Steve and I have done together were on other movies too, and we were on the Betty Davis movie. If we get tired of talking about Angela, we've got a ton of Betty Davis stories if you'd like to hear to it, if anyone's interested in those. I thought we could read a scene from one of her episodes. This one's called Sticks and Stones. This is June 3rd, 1985, revised. Written by Linda Shank and Mark Giles, who wrote quite a few of them. Peter Fisher was the producer, and Robert O'Neill was the other producer, and those two gentlemen were also really nice, and they spent a lot of time with my mom too. She respected both of those very much. Anyway, this one was, I don't know the whole story, but this is when Sheriff Tupper and Jessica are trying to figure out the murder. This is Act 4. So they're in the interior of Beverly's basement at night. Jessica hesitates, then reaches for the light cord and pulls it, plunging the basement into relative darkness. She steps back into the shadows near the fuse box as the footsteps move closer overhead. We hear the bathroom door open, a beat, then an offstage click, and a tiny shaft of light beams down from the floorboard, almost directly over her head. Jessica reacts, puzzled. She edges forward and looks up into the light. So that's the setting of the scene, and we're just going to read the lines, but there's a lot of stage direction in between. We're just going to do the lines. Amos!
Who's there? Who said that?
Amos, it's me, down here, in the basement.
That you, Miss Fletcher?
It's me. Come down here.
What are you doing down here, ma'am?
I could ask you the same question.
Well, I didn't have much to do. I thought I'd just look around, unofficially, of course.
Good. Look at this.
Just some wood shavings.
The kind made by a hand drill. And look up there. A neat little hole in the floorboard with a perfect view of the television set and the wall plug.
That's so?
Beverly's death was murder, Amos. This proves it.
I don't get it.
Look, here's the fuse box. We know the cord was frayed, and I think deliberately. The killer waited until Beverly was in the tub. Then he turned off the power. Beverly got out of the tub dripping wet, tried the on-off button. When that didn't do anything, Beverly did what all of us would do. She checked the plug to make sure the connection was secure. Because the killer could see her, he waited until she had a grip on the plug, and then...
I'll be. Nice thinking, ma'am. Only thing is, who did it?
Shh. We hear footsteps. Again, she grabs the light cord and plunges the basement into darkness. Someone is moving around upstairs. We hear doors being opened, drawers being pulled out. Amos, at this moment, I'm so sorry you retired. I don't suppose you brought your gun.
Turned it in. Uh-oh, sounds like he's coming to the basement door.
So how do you like that?
Thinking of something. Oh, shoot.
Who was it? You can't remember who it was?
Oh.
You gotta read the next page, it says.
You'll get it.
The one thing I always love about Murder, She Wrote is always in the last 10 minutes is like she always, I think I know who did it. There's always that little,
Yeah.
and she always solves the problem. I
And
mean,
it's always a red herring, every
Yeah.
time. Whoever you think is the murderer at the beginning of the show, it's not gonna be that one.
she was quite a thinker. She thought a lot.
It's fun.
Between her and Perry Mason, they never lost a head.
Does anybody have any questions for us?
Okay, I have then, not yet, wait, excuse me, that was it.
Oh.
I never gave you much time to respond. Let me get back to my list here. Oh, okay. So, we did think about, okay, the professionalism, okay, the lines. She was very gracious.
Good
Oh,
singer.
And we also, a lot of times when you're filming, when they're filming, there's a lot of waiting, where you just wait and wait because they're either setting things up and people go, oh, this is so boring, so boring. But when Jill's around, we never get bored. We just start talking and yapping. And in this one episode, it was with Gene Simmons and Shelley Fabre. Remember Johnny Angel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Donna Reed show.
Donna Reed show. She was on the Donna Reed show. But she was a guest star on this episode, along with Gene Simmons. And we were filming up at the Russian Gulch Park headquarters, which is it's up at Russian Gulch on the right-hand side instead of going left. And just a side note, it was kind of fun being back there because at one point I've also been a park ranger. So I have all these different things that I've done. But we were outside of the area headquarters and they used that as the sheriff's office. And
And Lindy was in that one too.
was he? Oh,
Yeah, but you guys were the reporters.
Oh,
So he wasn't dead in that.
well, this is
Oh, no, his face didn't show in the
No,
dead one.
it-
He
this-
had that dead part of it.
new episode, different episodes. Yeah, versatile actor. Yeah. He could lie down or stand up. I swim on his back. I'm sorry. Anyway, so we were outside and it was at nighttime. We had this long day of filming. We filmed all day and then we had to film into the night and it was like a 14-hour day. But for me it was like a 40-minute day because I just enjoyed the whole thing. It's just fun. It's so much fun.
So when you go past 8 hours, you get paid a certain amount. If you go past 12 hours, you get paid more. But when you go past that, you're in the gold. So we were in golden time
It
that
was
day.
a 13-hour day.
We were in golden
I mean,
time.
yeah, it was very exciting. So anyway, we were outside of the area headquarters while they were filming inside, and Jill and I will maybe start reminiscing or talking or just kind of playing, and all of a sudden we're talking and laughing and having fun, and all of a sudden there's a whole group around us talking and laughing and having fun. And at this one point, Shelley Fabre had finished her scene inside and came outside. And then she was talking and laughing and having fun, and we were all having just like one big group of people. And after they called it a wrap, which is the end of filming for the day, we went back to our respective dressing rooms. I was walking back to my dressing room for the last time because I was only there for one day. But as I'm walking back, Shelley Fabre was walking with me. And she said to me, she said, I had so much fun tonight. I haven't had this much fun working in such a long time. And I just thought, wow, that's right. For her, it's just a job. And for us, it's like, such a fun experience. And but she had a wonderful time. And so I would like to sometime be able to go to Los Angeles and look her up and say, well, hi, you may not remember me.
Do
We had
it.
a good time.
But we had a good time together, yeah.
can let you know what Barbara Reed wanted you all to know, and she wanted me to tell you that Angela Lansbury was lovely, and her husband Peter Shaw was always with her, and they would have dinner at the Hill House, and sometimes Barbara would have to act as a buffer to keep all the people from going up to them in the dining room. They kept to themselves mostly, but she remembers sitting by the fire with Angela and talking about her kids. They were such a pleasure. She enjoyed the filming here in Mendocino. It was a lot of fun and brought a lot of different jobs for the locals. In addition to being extras like they were, they could have a lot of background jobs or behind the scenes jobs in addition to being an extra. And having movies filmed here was good for the community, for the businesses, and also for getting work. And the studios always made donations when they left to the charities. Did Kelley House get any money from that?
Probably.
I hope so. I don't know. I'll check into that. And so anyway, they made donations when they left to the charities, to the schools, or to fix things up. And it was such a boon to the community. We all had so much fun and got paid to do it. Not very much, but they got paid. And that's basically what Barbara wanted me to tell you, other than that Jill Lemos is working on the revised edition of this book. And
Okay. Now, one of the things I was thinking about, that was that's kind of I'm trying to find the right word. And that, like an extra benefit from the series being filmed here is there's a certain amount of historical value. And how I can explain it best is I grew up in Mendocino and I moved away. I lived all over the country. When I was young, the old-timers said, go out and see the world. So I went out and I saw the world. And when I came back about 25 years ago, I got involved in different organizations. In fact, Toni's sister-in-law, Dee Lemos, got me involved here at the Kelley House, got me involved in town meetings, got me involved in all kinds of things. And one of them was getting involved with the local, we have a hall in town called the Crown Hall that was built by the Portuguese. And so I was on the board. My great-grandfather was one of the people that helped build the hall, in 1906 or something. Anyway, and at one point we were talking about putting up or replacing the old flagpole that used to be outside. But it was no longer there. And people said, well, I don't remember the flagpole. And I said, oh yeah, there was a flagpole. I distinctly remember it. And because you have to go through local organizations like the Historical Review Board in order to put something up like a flagpole and everything is, and they said, well, you have to prove it. And I'm going, oh, and then nobody had any pictures. And I don't know if you are, but I periodically binge watch different TV series. And there I am. I was into Murder, She Wrote at one point. And so I'm watching it, and as they're traveling around town, they were coming up Ukiah Street, right past the Crown Hall, and bam, there's the flagpole. And so I was able to take a screenshot of it and print out the picture and take it to the meeting and say, see, I've got proof, there was a flagpole there. And so in a lot of ways, Murder, She Wrote captures Mendocino in the 80s. And if you look at a lot of the local scenes around town and different places, it's like the old Noyo Bridge is in a lot of Murder, She Wrote episodes. It doesn't exist anymore. They replaced it with a new modern bridge. But there are certain benefits that you get with these shows that also help preserve a little bit of history.
Steve, can I throw in my
Oh, yeah.
story that fits in with yours? My name's Katie Taya. I'm a docent here, but I've been on the coast, working on the coast since the 80s. And my favorite Murder, She Wrote story is, I believe it was the second year, but probably 86. They're filming out on the headlands, and it had to do with a dead Revolutionary War soldier, and they were digging up his grave on the headlands. I've never seen a grave dig up so easily in my life as this one, but it was part of the storyline. And there were, as Steve said, there's a variety of hangers-on and people that are around. And somebody's standing at the edge of the bluff, and they're busily digging up the grave over here. And the person's looking off down the side of the bluff and realizes that there are two leg bones sticking out of the bluff. The bluff had obviously been falling away, and the leg bones are sticking out. So as the production is going on, this person goes and finds the state park ranger and says, can I show you something over here? And they point down off the hillside with the bones coming out. The next day, Sacramento sent an archaeologist over to properly dig out the bones. And they dug out, there were no hands, no feet, and no skull. But the rest of the body and the clothing on the body was there. And the bones were bundled up and taken off to Sacramento. Fast forward to 2013. The bones went back in '86 to Sacramento. An archaeologist is ready to retire, a state archaeologist, and they said, gee, Joe, what's the last project you'd like to do for state parks? And he goes, I want to know about those bones we dug up in Mendocino in 1986. Well, technology has changed a lot. They were able to tell from scanning the bones and all that it's somebody that had done a lot of upper body movement. They thought it was most probably a soldier, or a sailor, excuse me. There was sand in the pockets of his pants, which would have been typical for somebody that rolled on the ocean floor. The fact that his hands and feet were gone, I don't like to use the word crab bait, but it may have been crab bait. So they told us, they wrote a report, they sent it to the Kelley House, they told us all about the bones, and they said, great, we're ready to give you the bones back. And there were people here who were going, I'm not working in the archive with a box of bones sitting on a shelf. No, we're not doing that. So as a community, we said, well, we've got this box of bones. The person obviously died. Our question to state parks was, why was he buried out there? We have perfectly adequate cemeteries all over town. And they pointed out two things to us. They said, one, the body was in such bad shape, it had to be buried immediately. But number two, if it had been a person of color, if it had been a Hawaiian native, if it had been somebody from the South Sea Islands who were part of the sailor crews that came by, he would not have been buried in a white cemetery. So we don't know what happened at that point. But that's what state parks told us. So here we are in the Kelley House with a box of bones. And we're going, okay, what do we do with a box of bones? So we contacted the cemetery district. And we said, we know you have a singles row on the north end. Could we have a grave plot? I know these things are ordinarily charged for, but we said, could we have a grave plot? And they said, yes, you can have a grave plot. Then we turned to a woodworker in town that we knew through the Kelley House, and we said, can you make us a small casket that we can put the bones in? And he made us a lovely small casket. Then we talked to the minister at one of the churches, and we said, would you come do a graveside service? We don't know who he was, but he was somebody's son or somebody's brother, and we have a place to bury him now. We talked to a headstone carver who carved "Home is the Sailor from the Sea" on the headstone. We put a note in the Beacon, this is 2013 now, we put a note in the Beacon, we said we were going to bury the guy. The bagpiper shows up, and about 30 people from Mendocino showed up for his ceremony that we had. And we had a very nice ceremony. For the people that wanted to touch the bones, they could touch the bones. But we got a ceremony, we got him buried, we got him put back into place, because Mendocino as a community loves history, and a filming session with Murder, She Wrote started us on that whole path of what happened with that. And you can go visit his grave in the graveyard if you would like to.
And that's one of the scripts I brought. Joshua Peabody died here.
Okay, Joshua Peabody.
Yeah.
Which cemetery is it?
Evergreen.
Evergreen, and the singles row is the very north end in Evergreen.
Yeah, right next to the road.
Great story.
Story.
Anyone have any questions
Or like stories.
or stories? Anyone here was involved with Murder, She Wrote? What was your involvement with it?
I was a stand-in with my main job, but I worked on almost, I think, every episode they filmed here.
Wow, that's great.
A lot of
Was
fun
it
times.
fun?
It was fun, very nice, man. Everybody was nice.
That's good, that's good. Anyone else? Anyone have any questions or?
Did
And
you
also
stand in
craft-
for
craft
somebody in
service.
particular, or just everybody?
Well, in each episode, you usually have one person you were standing for, and you try to stay close to them. And,
Chuck Connors.
well, yeah, the job of the stand-in, when they're setting up the lights and the camera, you stand on the mark and they set everything up. That's your only job. And one time I was a stand-in for Chuck Connors, and later on during the film, he said, "Where's Ken Turner? Where's Ken Turner? I need a coffee."
Did you get him a coffee?
No. Wasn't in my job description.
I just wanted to add that the craft service on every production was excellent.
Yes, yes.
Not only coffee,
Oh.
tea, milk, juice,
Oh, food.
many kinds of juice, breakfast foods, cereals, donuts, everything. And then the lunches are beautifully catered.
I'm getting hungry.
They brought their own caterers quite often. It wasn't always just a bag lunch that, Safeway put together. They brought their own caterers with a big catering truck, and that's how we lasted on those 15-hour days, is just coffee and snacks.
One of the things that I've read about that I found really helpful, because Angela Lansbury became the producer also on Murder, She Wrote over time. And she, as most everyone knows, had a long history in Hollywood, and has worked with just a tremendous amount of different actors and actresses. And one of the things she liked to do with Murder, She Wrote is to try to give as many of her old friends jobs who were no longer working in the industry. And so you got a glimpse again to see people that maybe you hadn't seen on screen for 15, 20, sometimes 30 years. And she was always so considerate that way, always gracious, just, yeah. That's the only word I have for her, because I went to her one day, because they were filming over here near the post office, and I wanted to get a picture with her. And this is before you could take selfies and stuff. And I had this old 35mm camera, and I said, "Excuse me, Miss Lansbury, would you mind taking a picture with me?" And she said, why sure. And so while I'm standing next to her, I said, "I want to thank you for all that you've given," and she could not be more gracious in her response. It was like, it's like we were just, equal people, and and I'm holding her up on this pedestal, but she was just always very present. That's the only way I could describe her. Yeah, very present.
Yeah, some of the guest stars she brought up would show up in various states to some of the scenes, couldn't remember their lines, or smelled of alcohol or whatever, and it was always interesting to see people like a little bit out of their element. You see them on the screen and they always look perfect and the scene is perfect, but then you see them otherwise and they swear and they spit. There were some wild ones.
Oh, I do remember Jean Simmons at one point. Just because she was such a famous actress. I mean, if you ever saw The Robe with Richard Burton or Spartacus or any of those films.
Was she Song of Bernadette? Wasn't she in the song?
No, that was Jennifer.
Oh, thank you, I'm sorry.
Who was it?
Jennifer Jones.
Jennifer Jones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she was in early English films like Great Expectations. And a few others I just saw that, and David Lean had directed. Anyway, when she was here and was sitting, people like to talk, and she would start talking, and she would say, "Well, when Richard and I were filming, he was just this, and Richard did this, and then Richard that," and I went, "Richard Burton? Oh, okay, yeah, I get it." It was just, but tossing up all of these, name dropping like crazy, and well, it's fun to do that, but she did it because she had done it, and I just was. It was fun to listen to. It's like you're like 1-2 degrees away from
Yeah.
all the greats of Hollywood. Yeah,
She was Ophelia in Hamlet with Laurence Olivier.
that, okay, yeah. Yeah, just magnificent actress. And I used to hear her on the History Channel reciting verse and stuff. She was a great speaking voice. Of course, she didn't have to memorize those lines because she was off camera. She could just read them. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. I wonder how many times you had to do that.
So in Bruce Levine's Mendocino in the movies, I was just trying to look quickly to see who some of the other stars were here. It's naming a lot of local people, but here we have Kathy O'Grady plays the sole female reporter, Harry Rothman, Steve Jordan, Chris Byrne, and Lindy Peters,
Oh, I
all
didn't-
plays reporters. You made the book.
I didn't know I was into it. Oh my God.
Yeah, so there you are. But
I'll have to buy a
Tom
copy
Boston,
and sign
William
it.
Wyndham, they were the regular there. Let's see, Chad Everett, Leslie Nielsen, J. Eddie Peck. I don't know who that is.
Oh, you don't know him?
No, I don't know him. Julia
You don't
Montgomery.
either.
Anyway, this is a really good book
Yeah.
that Kelley House sells too.
Yes, we do. Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah.
Do you know how they landed on Mendocino as, you know, the setting? Because it's supposed to,
name.
Well, it's supposed to be Cabot Cove,
Right.
Maine.
yeah.
And Mendocino was settled by people from New England in the 1850s, and so all the architecture is very reminiscent to the East Coast.
Yeah.
And it's only 500 miles from here to Hollywood
Yeah.
versus 3,500 miles to Maine.
And there have been
To
a lot
Hollywood.
of films done before, and the scouts that came up looking for locations and whatnot contacted my mom. She took them all around. They looked at everything and said, "Oh yeah, this will work."
I mean, if you've seen Summer of '42, that's
Yeah.
supposed to be
Yeah.
Gloucester Island. No, Russians Are Coming was Gloucester
Gloucester,
Island.
yeah.
Johnny Belinda was supposed to be Nova Scotia. So all, yeah, it's east of Eden. It's supposed to be Monterey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks very much like Monterey. Well, they have tides, we have tides.
But how do they do that? We're supposed to be the East Coast of the Pacific's on that
That's what
side.
No, I figured it out. They use mirrors. They just film in a mirror. Everything is reversed. Yeah, you think the sun's setting on the west? No, it looks like it's on the east because mirrors.
Well, and I forget where Overboard was supposed to be, but
Oh.
that was also.
That was here.
Well,
Yeah.
Right.
well, I mean,
filmed here, but where was it
where was it
supposed
supposed to be?
Well, it's supposed to be, I think Oregon, I
Was
think.
that Oregon coast?
Oregon, yeah.
And what was that one with Sean Penn and somebody when
Racing with the Moon.
Racing with the Moon? And
And Nicky Cage,
and
my
they-
pal.
Yeah,
And
how
they
come
put-
I've always
yeah.
typecast you as a nurse, Jill?
I don't know, I had lines in quite a few things and they always ended up on the cutting room floor, so I don't know. But I had the hat, wore the hat.
Oh, in the Mirror, oh, this is the second line I had was in the Mirror episode, which got cut.
I know.
I don't know who to write to, I still want to write to somebody
I
about
know how
that.
you feel about it.
But it was, and you say you didn't know the victim in New York? And for those two lines, I still get residuals, and at the end of the year, I put all the money together and,
Buy a coffee.
well, kind of, I pack a sack lunch and go to Casper Beach.
Sally?
How many shows were in Murder, She Wrote? Because, I mean, I remember watching it for years, and it never seemed to start or to end, you know?
Oh,
About 10
The
were
series was-
filmed
was-
here, but
Yeah.
in a lot of the other episodes, they just used stock footage.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
The series lasted for 12 seasons,
Yeah.
but only the first 4 were made here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then a lot of times you'll see them and it'll say, well, we're in Cabot Cove, and then there'll be a shot of downtown
Right.
Main Street or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then they cut to the house, which is down in Hollywood, but
Yeah.
Right.
but they give you the impression that it was filmed here at that point. But
Right.
yeah,
Emily, you have a question?
Yes. I'm TJ, Toni's granddaughter, And I'm not sure if I made this up or if I just, when I was little, I saw all these photos with her and Angela, but was TJ her stand-in? And
She did a couple times, but it was only when they couldn't get another person.
Right.
Because she,
They had the
Mom
same hair.
usually, yeah, they had the same hair. Same era, same hair, and that's
Yeah,
why
about
Tyler
the same
thought they
hair.
were sisters.
That's so funny, that's so funny. I knew your mom was the stand-in for Joan Fontaine when they filmed a movie here,
Oh,
That was Frenchman's Creek.
Frenchman's Creek.
Yeah. Which was filmed on my grandparents' property in Little River, way, way back in the day. Well, my grandfather had known a lot of Hollywood people when they lived in Southern California, and when they moved up here right around wartime or right after wartime, forget the exact year they moved up, he had 300 acres in Little River, and they built the ship prop for that Frenchman's Creek on that property.
I think I read over here that Angela's mom was in Frenchman's Creek.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, I didn't know that.
There's an article over here.
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't looked at these
Yeah, that's
displays,
right.
they're really cool displays.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very cool.
her mother was an Irish actress
Yes.
named Moyna McGill, and she played Lady
Yes.
Dolphin in Frenchman's Creek.
Yeah.
And also.
Oh,
wow.
Very good to know.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the,
Well, I can let you all know that we're going to be having another exciting Angela Lansbury event on May 5th. We're going to be having basically a hosted reception at the Blair House Inn, which was where Angela Lansbury lived when she was Jessica Fletcher. And then we're going to have basically a screening of her film highlights at Matheson, which is basically across the street. So we're going to be releasing the tickets next month. Hopefully you'll all come and join us. I don't know how much it's going to cost, but hopefully you'll all come and join us. And if you want to leave a statement for Angela Lansbury, the paper and pens are right over there. And I believe there are still thumbtacks that you can tack it into the wall.
Okay.
Can we answer any additional questions? Yes.
My final question. Are there other stories out here in the audience? I'd love to hear them.
Anyone have any?
A real quick one to end with. I worked at Gallery Bookshop in the corner, but I watched the action on Main Street. And it was at a time when they would put a cameraman in the back of a pickup truck, and Angela would walk down the street and the pickup truck would follow. Well, to make the street look right, they would run down and put paper Maine license plates on all of the cars on Main Street, so that when the camera went by, it would look like you were in Maine instead of California license plates. And I always thought of the poor tourist who drove off, got 200 miles down the road, walked around the end of his car, and said, "How did I get a paper Maine license plate?" But usually somebody would come by afterwards and pick them all off again, but people got away occasionally. But I wanted to share that as a laugh.
well, one other little story I remember is that if you have a speaking line, they want to make sure that you have makeup on. And since I had my speaking line, I had to go and they put like Kleenex around my neck and makeup on, and they said, well, don't take the Kleenex off for a little while. This is over in front of the Beacon office, the next street up. And so after I get out of makeup, there's a lot of tourists also in town that are watching and looking, and so when I got out of makeup, I was walking around, and walking, and you could see people going, "Who's that? Looks familiar. I think I know him." I was no one, but I pretended to be someone for a little while. And then just another little side story, when they were, Toni again, like I said, she's responsible for my entire film career, really. And every time they needed extras in town too, I was always trying to be an extra or anything to do with the movies. And they were filming a movie here called Wired, about John Belushi's life. And this is in the early 80s. And
they were filming the cemetery scene up north of Fort Bragg, past or near Cleone. And they had all of these fake tombstones out in this field. And of course, there's tons of local people coming up to watch the filming. And I was an extra. I was a police officer. So I had the police hat, you know, you got everything. And so just for fun, you'd see all these people lined up, and I'd walk by and go, hey, all of you, please, move over this way. And they would just go like this. Oh, power. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. But again, that was what, yes.
I was an extra on Wired.
Oh.
If you remember, at that scene, it was like 80 degrees in Fort Bragg, and they had us dressed because it was the winter time, John Belushi's death. It was John Belushi.
Uh-huh.
And so they had us all dressed in heavy coats and and you talked about waiting around and all the filming and how much fun you had. Well, I'm a New Yorker. I didn't have any fun. That was just taking way too much of my time. And I was all good. Pat Becker was with me and Cynthia from Little River Inn, and we were all these extras because Toni wanted us to be in it, I'd be the extras. And I actually walked off, and the director's like, excuse me, where are you going? And I go, I'm leaving, and they're coming with me. It was just too hot, and so I didn't enjoy that. Constantly taking a picture of the car going up and down the road. We were out there, and it was so hot. Yeah, Bobby Beacon's Rolls Royce.
Yeah, I was riding in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So many times, again, Toni, Toni got me involved in another film. It was a pilot for a TV show, which didn't take off. It was about this old sea captain and this little brother and sister and the sea captain is a ghost, kind of like the ghost in Mrs. River. Yeah, and it was with Keenan Wynn. And also a boy that was the courtship of Eddie's father. Remember the little kid? Yeah. He was the boy in it, and then Kathleen Quinn, or that little
Jeremiah of Jacob's Neck.
Jeremiah of Jacob's Neck.
There we go.
And I was on what was called the second team, or the stand-in. That you would sit there and they'd focus all the lights and stuff like that. And they hired local extras again, and what was supposed to happen is these robbers or something were kidnapping these little kids. And the townspeople were lined up along the road. This is up at Agate Beach, just at the end of Lansing Street down there. And there's only one house right at Agate Beach that's on the ocean side there. And that's where the action took place. And all the people were lined up along the highway. And the director said, now I want you to point, because this is so awful, and look and be concerned. And so they filmed the sequence, and then they said, cut. Because I'm going to film it again. Now this time, remember, you're concerned about the kids being kidnapped, so please don't be smiling while you're pointing, because everybody was smiling because they were on camera. But Toni, again, was the one who...
Yeah, she's all over all of these movies in here, and all the different ones. Here's one I was in, Dead and Buried. Now, I had a line, and it didn't get cut. Are you ready to hear it?
Yeah.
Yes, doctor. You're not the only one that remembers your lines.
Jill, all I can say, that was so moving.
Yeah, I was a nurse again.
I feel taken care of.
Yeah, we were in a lot of stuff together. I don't know if we have time, or if you want to go off topic a little bit and hear some Betty Davis stories, but we've got a lot of them. I don't know.
You guys want it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
In the Joshua Peabody episode, I was an extra, a very visible extra, because I was a cameraman. And I always got stuck with the camera because I was tall. And so we were filming out on the headlands. And I was also working as a stand-in. And so I'm all dressed very nice, being a cameraman, and they needed a stand-in to be for the dead body down in the hole. So I had to go climb down to the hole and lay down in my good clothes as a stand-in for a dead body.
Oh my God. At least you weren't in the water.
Yeah, I went in the water. No, that was...
Yeah, we did strangers, the story of a mother and a daughter. It was Betty Davis and Jenna Rollins, and talk about polar opposites of nice, gracious, and mean, horrible. That was it. Jenna Rollins was so sweet and so nice to everybody, and Betty didn't want to talk to anybody. She didn't want to do anything but her lines and smoke. And she was fantastic at her lines, and I've admired her work all my life. I still think she's amazing. But when we met her, we were the waiter and waitress at Heritage House at her birthday party, and the two women were having their birthday dinner there. We sang Happy Birthday and brought in the desserts. They kept doing the scene over and over with the dialogue, dessert after dessert after dessert. One or two bites, get a new dessert, right?
Yeah, want me to set it up a little bit?
Sure.
This is okay. In this particular film, Betty Davis has been living in this town for years and years and years, and she's become a curmudgeon, so to speak. And she does not, she and her daughter have been estranged for years. Well, her daughter shows up kind of out of the blue and wants to reestablish a relationship. And because she's dying of an unspoken disease, but she's dying. And the reason why they have dinner at the Heritage House is Jenna Rollins says to Betty Davis, she says, but it's not my birthday, Betty Davis says. She says, I know, but I'm not going to be here when it is your birthday. Okay? And so what happens during the scene, they're eating and they bring out a big birthday cake because Jenna Rollins wants to celebrate her mom's birthday, and we sing happy birthday to her. And Betty Davis, with a knife, says to Jenna Rollins, I can't eat another thing, but I'm going to have a piece of cake. And she takes the knife and she cuts it, and she looks at her daughter, and she cuts it. And whoops, and I burst into, I'm off balance. Anyway, I burst into, tears just started running down. And say, cut, let's do it again. She does it again. 13 times they did this scene.
Wow. 13 cakes?
They had 13 cakes.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
And every time, it was like a Hallmark movie for me. I cried at the end of it every single time.
It was so moving.
Tears would come down. But I have to say this, I experienced two things with Betty Davis. One, she had a little interaction with the director because he said to her, in this scene, I want you to try this and this and this. And she said, no, absolutely not. And he goes, well, why? And he said, because she says, Abigail in Act 1, Scene 2 says this and this and this. In Act 3, Scene 2, she says this and this. She would never do that. And I thought, she's not difficult to work with. She knows her character. She knows her lines. She knows what's correct and what's not correct. And so at the end of the filming, we filmed like, again, I think close to 13 hours. Although as an extra, you don't get the extra golden parachute. But at the end of the filming, and they kept putting eye drops in our eyes because under these lights, our eyes were turning red, and they're filming a long time inside. And finally, when they said,
dusting, and she's going like this, and they're doing this, she's going like that, and they're fixing her wig. Go ahead.
And so at the end of the day, when they said, it's a wrap, cut, I went up to her and I said, excuse me, Miss Davis. And she goes, yes. And now she was a very tiny little thing, but she has these incredible blue eyes. And when she looks at you, throws you against the wall. I mean, you can feel, My mother used to have that kind of with her finger going, move, get. But Betty Davis with a look, you could feel, and it was much more intense than my mother ever was. And I just went, wow, she's so powerful. But at the end of the day, I went up to her and I said, excuse me, Miss Davis. And she said, yes. I said, I have been privileged to work with some of the world's greatest opera singers, like Pavarotti and Beverly Sills and Joan Sutherland. I said, but today has been one of the highlights of my life. Thank you so much. And she took my hand and shook it. And if you want to take pictures of my hand, I have not washed it since that time.
So I went to her and I said, Miss Davis, could I take your picture? I'd rather not.
Oh,
I don't know how you got in with her.
well, yeah.
But
It's who you know.
She was so dramatic
Oh.
when the camera stopped too. And I remember at that, after, it was a huge long day. She had a wig on, and then they also had this kind of this brace thing that, you know, I wouldn't mind having one that pulls all the wrinkles back underneath the wig. And when the day was done, she went to her chair, she grabbed that wig and she threw it down and grabbed that headband thing, threw it down and called out, "Peggy!" That was her assistant. "Peggy!" And Peggy immediately came over and gave her a cigarette and lit it. I mean, she didn't between the scenes, but I mean, that was the end of that day.
Oh.
So I don't know. I admire her too.
I-
She's so fantastic, but she was nice to me.
Oh.
Or the other people.
Well, I mean, I was
Charlie
very.
Boyce and I danced, speaking of the cold
Oh,
weather,
oh.
out on the Noyo
Oh,
Flat.
4th of July.
It was supposed to be 4th of July, so we were all in shirt sleeves, and it was about 38
Oh,
degrees.
It was like this week.
It was
I
like
mean,
the
it was freezing.
opposite of what yours was. Is
Yeah.
We were all in skimpy clothes, and it was so freezing out there.
And
But she had a big fur coat that they wrapped her in between
between
scenes.
scenes. And I was also in that scene, and I was positioned next to Jill's aunt, Dee Lemos. We were part of the, looking at a table, we were drinking beer, talking, watching the 4th of July events. Well, in between shots, Dee and I started reminiscing. She was my high school English teacher, okay? And we started reminiscing about all the kids that were in my classes in high school. And Dee had a great sense of humor, and we started laughing, and then laughing, and the tears were coming down, and more tears were coming down, and then they would get ready to film. We go, "Oh God, Dee, we gotta kind of sober up here. We're just having too much fun." And so when you see us on the film, we're like, and we look like we're having the most boring time of our lives, but we had the most wonderful time of our lives. We just laughed all the
Good actors.
Oh God, it was so much fun.
So many good memories.
Yeah.
Some classics. Anyway.
I have.
One more Betty.
Well, no, this is a summer.
I want to
40.
say a nice thing about Betty.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, another family member, my niece Renee, was one of the 3 children in one of the scenes down on the flat, and Betty was wonderful to the kids. She loved all the kids. She just didn't like me. I don't know. She loved you.
Oh yeah, she wrote me every week after that.
I know. Go ahead.
No, this is a little different story to show you. This is about summer of '42. I'm switching. I don't know if you've ever seen Summer of '42.
There's someone that was in it back there too.
Oh, hello.
Jitterbug on the beach for 12 hours, I couldn't walk the next day.
Well, in the movie Summer of '42, the beautiful Jennifer O'Neill is married to the serviceman who goes off to war, but he is in town visiting her, and then he is called away. And there's a scene down at Noyo where he gets on board this little fishing boat that takes him from the island back to the mainland so he could go to war. And I was a corporal in that. I was a corporal at that. And I was on board that little fishing boat too.
I was a nurse.
Your sister's right.
And a very good nurse. And so on this fishing boat, what had happened is they're right there at the dock. Jennifer O'Neill is hugging her husband. He kisses her. The fishing boat starts up, and my wife and child, a wife with a little doll on the shore, was and the director said, "Now wave goodbye to your wife and child. You may never see them again." So I was like worked up emotionally.
Oh, no.
I had taken like one acting class at Chico, and I thought I was hot. And so they say action, and the boat starts to pull away, and Jennifer O'Neill's husband leaps from the pier onto the boat and just makes it, and we go out to sea,
And the director said, now wave to your wife and child. And I wave, and I wave, 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 and I wave, and we're about 100 yards out, going out to sea there at Noyo, and then they say, cut, cut, and the boat comes back around. And I'm looking up in the hillside, and I have a couple friends up there, and they are just rolling on the ground with laughter. And I'm going, I'm acting here. So the director says, Corporal. And I'm going, oh, that's me. And they go, yes. And he says, I want you to wave and then look out to sea. And I thought, oh my God, I am so good. They're giving me more stuff to do. And so they go, action. The same thing happens, and I wave, and then I stop. And I turn, and I look to the sea. And cut. The boat comes back around. And they go, Corporal. I go, more. He says, just go to the front of the boat and look to where you're going. All you see is the back of my head. I ruined 2 huge long takes in about 30 seconds. My life in movies. No, that's it.
They let us in the union.
They let us in the union. I'm a union member.
Did you vote? It's on tomorrow night, the SAG Awards.
Oh,
Tomorrow
God.
night. Did you vote?
No, I did not. I did not.
Did you? Absolutely.
Good for you.
I voted for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's an amazing film.
Oh, God.
But you know, the life in the movie. I can remember. Now I'll go back to East of Eden.
Oh, wow.
I was 5 years old when they were filming it here, and I still remember down next to the hotel where the garden room, the next building over, which is now a jewelry shop or antique store. Something. Anyway, I can
The post
remember.
office was on the other side of the street,
You know,
and the butcher shop was on the other side of the street.
and when I was 5 years old, they had a call for extras, and I wanted to be in East of Eden. I wanted so much because I was raised in a movie theater, basically. And I remember it was packed with people, but I was a little shy. And so I was... I've overcome a few things in life. And so I was kind of at the back, but I remember they chose Johnny and Nancy Haylally to be in the film. And I've never forgiven them. But that was my first film rejection, so when people say, well, how long have you been working in film? I said, since I was 5 years old, because that was my first rejection.
Well, that film too shows all the buildings that were on the south side of Main Street back in the day.
More history moments,
Yeah.
more history moments, yeah.
That's true.
And
And the one that burned down. Wasn't
Well, there was one between Betty Geisreiter's house and the dump that burned down. Remember that? That was a controlled burn the fire department did.
oh, wait a second. Wait, there was a controlled burn of Strauss's house down on the cliff.
Yeah.
Elmer Strauss's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in like 1958. That was the doctor's house in Johnny Belinda.
Yeah.
The doctor's residence. Yeah, that was straight down here.
And then where the art center is now, that also burned.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking.
Preston's house.
Dr. Preston's
That was
house.
a different doctor's house. Why are those doctor's houses burning?
Couldn't get good nurses.
Jill also has a backup profession, professional arsonist.
I don't smoke. Oh, man.
Anyway, thank you for indulging. It's always fun with Jill, no matter what.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't get us started
Yeah.
on our catechism stories.
Anyone else have any questions?
Thank you very much for coming today. I really appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much. I'll look for you all on May 5th at Blair House.
Good to see you.